All right, Serge Koenig. I work for Sauk County Conservation Department, and I've been in that capacity for nearly 27 years. And our primary charge here is to preserve and conserve our natural resources. And as I visit a farm, one of the first things that I look at is what's the condition of the vegetation on the farm. Do we have overgrazed stream banks? Is there tillage on the surface? Is there diversity on the landscape? If it is pasture, is it overgrazed? Is it undergrazed? What kind of animals am I seeing? So those are the first things that I take a quick look at, but also get a background check on what the natural resources are, what's the geology, and what's the soil type. Is it a sandier soil type? And what's the topography like? Are we talking about unglaciated, glaciated? If it's glaciated, Mother Nature tends to smooth out the landscape a little bit and flattens it out. If it's unglaciated, which half of my county, Sauk County, is not, it's rough. You know, the edges are very rough and things aren't smoothed out. And so the topography is pretty severe, which then affects water holding capacity, the kind of soils we're dealing with. And so the first and foremost, what can we do to improve the soils? What can we do to improve the soil resources? And a lot of that has to do with the soil health principles. And one of them being keep diversity on the landscape, keep the soil covered at all times, crop rotation, incorporate livestock. Well, rotational grazing actually checks all those boxes. One of the ways we like to assess the health of the soil is to check the soil with a shovel and just digging into the soil profile and assessing that profile can tell you a lot. And one of the things you will see oftentimes is a platy structured soil. There's an area where the soil is pressed down like an accordion, and that's not allowing water to infiltrate through it. And so doing a shovel cut and just looking at the roots and looking at the soil profile will help you determine whether or not you have a compaction issue. And that's a very common one in our ag systems, including overgrazed pastures. Compaction is a big issue. Pick a few spots. You don't want to just do it in one spot because maybe a tractor just drove through there a month ago and you don't know it, and so it looks very compacted. So pick 2 or 3 different spots throughout. And it's a good way to educate the landowner too. I would say, like, hey, take a look at this. Let's look at this together. What do you see? Do you see the platy structure in the soil? Do you not? If you do, what do you think that is? We just kind of talk it through together. And then we talk through like, well, when we allow plants to rest and we allow them to grow taller, the roots grow deeper. And when we do that, those roots will start to break apart this plow pan or platy structure. And pretty soon your soil is going to breathe again here, and it's going to start drinking water again, which is what it should be doing. One of the things we like to do is an infiltration test to assess the health of the soil, and that involves pounding a ring, a 6-inch ring, into the ground and dumping an inch of water inside of it and starting the timer. And in well-managed pastures, whenever I've done this, water will infiltrate into the soil within less than a minute. Oftentimes it's within 30 seconds. And yet, if you did the same thing on overgrazed pastures or tilled cropland, we've sat for 45 minutes before it infiltrated. And so that's a resource concern, and that really ties into the water infiltration rates of our soils so that we don't have such a big volume of water running off into our streams, causing excessive flooding, carrying with it sediment. And along with those sediments are chemicals and also nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen that end up impacting the water resources. And so what we tend to see then is the accumulation of this where we have that stream or river being impounded, like on the Wisconsin River, where we see Castle Rock, flowage, or Lake Wisconsin here in Sauk County. It gets very green during the summer, and that's from this runoff from our farmsteads. And yes, there's municipality and there's some towns along the way, but a huge majority of it is coming from our cropland and our pasture land. Another thing that I like to look at is, what's the wildlife component on that farm? Are we seeing pollinators? Is there habitat to accommodate for them? What about the reptile life? What about the bird life? What are we seeing? And it's not uncommon in our corn and bean ground to see very little of all that because there's just no diversity. I like to keep an eye on that because once we convert that land to pasture, what you'll notice is an increase in the bird life, especially the grassland birds. And you'll also notice an increase in the butterflies and the rest of the pollinators that are out there and the native bees. And when you walk along the pasture, you can see it. You can see it with your eye and you can hear them buzzing, actually. It's just really, it's a night and day difference. And you'll hear the meadowlark singing in the background and the bobolinks singing in the background. So it's a nice change altogether. I think it's something that's worth keeping an eye on. That's when you start to figure out like that the land is coming back into shape, that it's restoring itself back to the way it may have been at one point, and that's kind of one of the goals here. So there's a stream behind me, and if there's a stream on these farms, that's one of the first things I look at also, is like, how is that stream being impacted by the farming practice on that particular farm? Are the banks raw? Are they bare? Are they trampled? Are they incising? Are they sloughing off from maybe excessive runoff? And those are the things we want to look at, and perhaps we have to address that. If it's eating away into the pasture or going to take out fences that you put in, obviously you have to address that. And so, I mean, it's important to look at that also. Oftentimes management fixes a lot of it by letting things grow so that reducing the volume of water getting to that stream, that really helps fix a lot of things. And then at that point, nature will heal that bank on her own. But that might be a long time, and you may need to step in to fix that. So if you have a stream running through the farm, one of the ways that I've found that really works as far as protecting it is to treat it as a separate block. And what I mean by that is put your fences parallel to that stream so that you can let the animals in there whenever it's ready to be grazed as one block, and then we remove them and let it recover. And in so doing that, we're not concentrating animals in one particular area. That way they have access to the whole stretch, and they can pick and choose their way through, and your job is to keep an eye on that so that we aren't overgrazing that and we move them out of there right away. And if you can't do that, one way around it is to channel the animals to a particular area, to the stream or the river, and surface that. You know, maybe it's, some gravel and some screenings or something like that, some shaping, little fabric, some breaker rocks, some gravel, and screenings over the top just to fortify that so that we control their access to that stream so they're not wandering everywhere and causing a lot of damage on our streams. And so that way works. If you have a pond situation, it doesn't take much phosphorus to green up a pond. So if you take a pound of phosphorus, that will green up a 1 acre lake that's about 10 feet deep. And that's just 1 pound of phosphorus. And that's why we don't really want too many animals accessing ponds that don't have stream flowing through, flushing out the phosphorus in essence. And so one way around that would be to put a pump in and pump it somewhere else, or put a tube in and pipe that somewhere else away from the pond so you can leave the pond resource intact. So as you're writing these grazing plans, one of the things to keep in mind are the funding pools that exist out there to help accomplish some of these goals. And I know in my line of work, 99% of the folks that I work with take advantage of the cost sharing. It's there, and it sure makes conversion much simpler and much cheaper. There's a lot of good ideas out there, but if you don't have the funds to pull it off, is it really a good idea if you can't follow through with it? And so the funding pools help you follow through with those good ideas. Grazing being one of the best ideas out there. So in the end, what we're really trying to do is protect the soil resource, the water resource, the plant resource, the animal resource, the wildlife resource. And one of the best ways to accomplish all those goals is to not overgraze your pastures, to let them grow until near maturity, graze them, but not overgraze them, leave enough of the solar panels behind that allows the soil to be covered so that the temperatures in the soils are kept cooler, which is also better for the plant growth, which is what we're looking for. And in the end, that helps us. All of those things help us. Cleaner air, cleaner water, healthier animals, places to fish, places to hunt, places to trap. All those things are things that actually help us humans in the long run. So you're really checking a lot of boxes by letting the plants grow, graze them a little bit, and letting them grow again and graze them a little bit. And it's all about managing the plants, I would say. And when you manage the plants, you automatically manage the soil, which also helps us manage the livestock that we're working with.